Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining. We're just waiting for more of the participants to be logged into the site and into the stream, and we will be ready to go. Okay, we can go ahead and get started. Thanks everybody for being here today. No matter what time of day it might be, folks tend to be all over the world. It's early morning for me here. Happy to be with you. This is next generation BSS. And I need to be on video. This is next generation BSS, the case for a modular approach. My name's Ed Feingold. I'm a contributing analyst with the TM Forum, and we have a great panel with us today. We're very fortunate to have the CIO of Vodafone Germany, Ulrich Ernig, with us, as well as Bikram Sherawat, the global business head for platforms and 5G in the CME vertical with Tech Mahindra, and bringing the Comviva Blue Marble BSS solution to market. And Comviva is our sponsor today. Thank you very much to them. So a few points, just a few points here. Ali, next slide, please. I'm going to ask you to please go ahead and download the ebook that we produced in collaboration with Comviva, Next Generation BSS, the case for a modular approach. They'll provide a lot of the depth of the data, some of which we'll present today. But data that we've collected in the TM Forum about the BSS market, and just giving an idea of why operators, as they're struggling with various aspects of their BSS, trying to expand, trying to grow into new markets, that a modular approach might be something that makes sense. And obviously this is aligned with the TM Forum's open digital architecture concept. So that the report or the ebook gives you quite a bit of detail on how those two things line up. A couple other things. Please go ahead and download the ebook, as I mentioned. The slides will be shared afterwards, so don't worry about grabbing screenshots or typing like mad to take notes. We'll share all that with you. And then as we go along, please use the Q&A box for questions as we go. We are going to try to make this interactive, so you'll have me present a bit. I'll be asking some questions and chatting with the panelists. Uli, or Mr. Ernig, will go. He'll talk to you a little bit about the Vodafone's 2025 vision. And then Bikram will bat clean up here and provide the examples of how Comviva's Blue Marble has been helping to solve some of the problems that we're going to illuminate during the chat. So next slide, please, Ellie. Okay, so what are we going to address here today? A few key things. So obviously the big topic is, what does the future look like for BSS, and how do we overcome some of the big challenges related to it, which obviously we'll dive into. And so obviously this is all happening sort of in a moving target or a busy environment, as we know. Cloud migration obviously is happening gradually. And we'll talk more about that in depth, but BSS is proving to present some of its own challenges in that trend. Obviously we're seeing very big bets on 5G growth, especially in B2B verticals, but in general, and those bets are forcing changes. And actually making problems with integration automation harder in a lot of ways, we're finding. So some of the classic tech challenges, like we said, actually have become more severe. And at the same time, we have a lot of new BSS needs that are becoming very urgent because of changes like 5G and obviously things related to it. So getting into automation, getting into zero touch, industry 4.0, really depending on what perspective you come at it from. I feel like all of these things sort of converge and results in these same kinds of issues for CSPs. And then so obviously, finally, CSPs want answers, on how to deal with these things. And how do you expand your BSS to support your new business initiatives without disrupting, the perhaps billions of dollars that it's been shepherding, perfectly well for a long time. And, obviously we've had this question come up and up, again and again over the years. Ali, go ahead and next slide, please. So, we see cloud migration happening. And I know that there's a lot of, there's sort of a dubious debate around this, right? Is it really happening? How fast is it happening? And I've been wrapped up in this debate with folks lots of different times, and it can be a little bit confusing. From a data perspective, what we've collected, we see pretty much in every market, around the world that most, if not all, operators are migrating to, either hybrid, public-private or private clouds. Some combination thereof, right? And that's about 66%, as you see on the chart. And then we have about another third that's really focused more specifically on private cloud. And then I actually, I personally find this chart a little bit misleading, only because, if you look at the last three choices, they're sort of all public cloud. And so if you add them up, well, there we are, another third that's focused on public cloud. And so that's why I think it sort of disputes this idea that, that shift isn't happening in the industry. I mean, if you look at it from one perspective, you have over 90% of operators using public clouds in some fashion, or using, a combination. So, I mean, I think to me, that's a pretty good sign that the migration is happening in full. There's just a lot of change organizationally that still needs to happen. And it also becomes a question of, okay, well, which workloads are you moving? Which, again, brings us back to, BSS, being, and then billing in particular being kind of a special animal. Ali, next slide. Next slide, please. Thank you. So then we have 5G come in. We're wrestling with all these issues now. 5G's come in, and it's done a few big things that we've seen. Obviously there could be a really long list here. We could just do the whole talk on this alone, but seen a lot of emphasis on B2B and on new business models. And then along with that, an urgent need for a lot of new automated BSS functions. But in the process, right, with this focus on 5G, you end up having some major technology challenges exposed, along the way, again, because of the pressure that 5G is putting on a lot of different areas of the business and some of the requirements it brings. Ali, please go to the next slide. I think we are on. Sorry, I believe we were supposed to have a poll question in here, was my understanding. I'm going to kind of throw it out to the audience anyway. Here we go. Which model do you favor for BSS in the cloud? So let's talk about this a little bit, what you think about what your answer might be, what we're seeing here. So two different things. One, right, we see operators engaged in a lot of different industry verticals. And there's no one dominant one, right? And when you look deeper at the data, you see that at this point already, right, really before sort of the big push, for maybe new 5G verticals, or new verticals with 5G offers oriented towards them, even before that kicks in, we're seeing most operators already engaged, obviously, in 2 to 3, vertical industries one way or another, with some kind of a focused offering for that space. And so, I mean, that shouldn't be surprising, right? I mean, it's not like operators are starting from ground zero on B2B, but there's obviously a very new emphasis and a lot of new questions about, well, what's the business model going to be, and what are the services going to look like, and how do customers want to consume those services now when they're accustomed to things like AWS? So you log in, set up an account, start hitting APIs and consuming services very quickly, right? It's a very different model. So yeah, I'm seeing a comment here saying due to some regulatory constraints that prevents from going public overseas. No doubt. I mean, just to say quickly that one of the things we were talking about before, why is billing a special animal? Well, you're talking about data that's regulated. And there's a lot of laws around it, and where it can be shared, where it can be stored, what countries it can run through, all that sort of thing. So I have a very good point. And I appreciate that public cloud absolutely is a necessity. And I think there's going to be a certain baseline of that along the way. So in any event, let's keep moving though. If we look at the models, right, the big question is, what are these models? The traditional connectivity model, is that the best to provide new revenue growth? Is the end-to-end services model the best to provide new revenue growth? Or is the platform model, right? And this is where it gets a little bit, contentious sometimes, or controversial. And Uli, I'm wondering if you might screen and talk to us a little bit about what you think about the platform model. When we look at this, what's the you know what? We took the poll. That was the first poll question. I'm sorry, I messed up the order of the poll question. We're gonna have to come back. Let's stay where we are. My apologies, Uli.
Thank you very much, Ed. Unfortunately, I cannot join the let's say the poll because the hosts are not allowed to do that. But as you pushed out the first poll, right? we are looking for multiple public clouds to use them. And if you look, and we are using them for different areas of interaction, right? We are using one for analytics stuff, right? And we are using one especially for the BSS stuff, and how we scale them. And for us, if you look at these bars, it's all across. It's connectivity, it's end-to-end service, and it's platform, right? And being in that kind of, let's say, three-dimensional challenge, because our customers are expecting connectivity, end-to-end service, and platform business, right? You have to play on these things. And in the let's say old world, you try to build that, but that's massively, and especially 5G. If you look at that is really a game changer, right? You can, especially with mobile edge computing, you can pull your data center on your end device, right? And that means that you have just other, let's say, entertainment and also, let's say, augmented reality possibilities you haven't had before, right? Because it's agnostic from your end device. It's just coming from the edge, right? And that's especially what, let's say, cooperation like with AWS helping really to push this kind of technology to your device.
So let me take the question in a slightly different direction, which is, if I come at this from a TM forum perspective, right, an operations person, a BSS person, I'm thinking a little bit about, how I deliver the service. And when I think about, if I think about a connectivity model, I'm thinking about our traditional ordering and provisioning type process. When I think about a platform model, it's like I said before, I'm thinking about, from the user's perspective, the access to the services like an AWS or Google Cloud, or that kind of a model. So for the services you mentioned, 5G, things like edge services, things that companies want to use to innovate for themselves, right? The end customer wants to use. What does that user experience need to look like? And if you drastically compare the difference between the connectivity versus the AWS or platform approach.
Yeah. Especially if you look at it from a user perspective, it has to be very easy. So users are addicted to a platform business, right? So easy to connect, easy to use, easy to observe, right? And that's something everybody expects from us, right? To provide such kind of service, right? And therefore you have to build up more and more platforms. And also this kind of platform experience gives you also the breadth to embrace, let's say, e-commerce services, payment services, all kind of services onto that. And you see that for the big, let's say, digital giants, they are building ecosystems, especially around that. And that's, our customers, they cannot differentiate. They want to experience the same service from us.
That makes sense. And then that goes back to what you said before, where it's not really one of these three things, it's all three of them. And from the user experience, it certainly is, right?
And that makes life for a CIO especially challenging, right?
I know. So some people are envious of your job and others are not. So fair enough. So can we, I apologize. I blew past that, the other poll question, and we have a second poll question that's actually about the platform model. And I'm wondering if we can hit that poll real quick now. And then we maybe, Ali, I don't know if you still have the results of the previous poll, but maybe we can come back to it as we move forward. So I'll tell you what, Ali, can we move to the next slide while people are answering that poll? And I'll keep going, and then I'll come back and we'll talk about the results. Okay, so along with the platforms, and we'll mention the poll results in a minute here. One of the other big changes, obviously, we're seeing with 5G is demand for a need for more automated services and more on-demand BSS. And you can see from this chart, where we're asking operators, how urgent is each of these capabilities? And it's kind of funny because the answer for most of them is, well, most operators say that they're urgent, and how can everything be urgent? And I think to me, this just expresses, part of it's how we ask the question. We're asking about a lot of new types of capabilities that are maybe not in your traditional or thought of as part of the traditional, certainly not the traditional legacy going way back, with telephony, BSS stack. But it's interesting to see that, you have a lot of this urgency, which just sort of points out the fact that, because we have the introduction, as Uli was pointing out, it's not just 5G and a lot of other new technologies, but all these different new models that need to be accommodated and new end user expectations. It starts to put this emphasis on obviously, things like automated service configuration, digital experience and commerce management, which is one of the services Uli was just talking about. Obviously, there are types of, range of services, really. Real-time revenue management. I mean, none of these things really should be a surprise. Customer analytics obviously being dominant up there, I found interesting because I think in the in the BSS space, or in the telecom space, we tend to talk more about things that are telecom specific as opposed to things that cross industries, as customer analytics does. But telecom, obviously, like many other industries, is having this sort of renaissance of customer analytics and a lot of new technology for handling really big data sets. That's a separate webinar on AI and what have you, obviously. So I'm not really, at first I was a little bit surprised that we had such a strong reaction or such a strong urgency around customer analytics. But when you really think about it, the fact that 3/4 of the industry finds that urgent really shouldn't be that surprising, I think, just given the overall trends. Do we have results on this poll? We do. Okay. So interesting, just coming back to the model perspective. Again, end-to-end services approach. And I'm wondering just, we'll keep moving here, but just based on what Uli was saying, you could obviously interpret end-to-end services as inclusive of all of this. So maybe we shouldn't be surprised that that's where the majority tends to fall. But it is interesting to see that very few people in our webinar feel that the traditional connectivity model is the best path forward. And I find that refreshing, just in the sense of the industry obviously getting, not just waking up to, but getting excited about what the possibilities are, with new technologies and new ways that customers want to consume things. Okay, I'm getting passionate now here. So let's move. Hang on. Yeah, so one thing I actually wanted to call out here, Bikram, can you jump on for a minute? Because we want to talk about 5G slicing a little bit. And that's a topic that I keep hearing come up in BSS conversations, that 5G network slicing and monetization really go together. And I'm hearing voices from the BSS community saying, hey, we have 5G slicing solutions. Why? why is that a BSS capability? What's the connection there? And why maybe is that a capability that should be on this list?
Thanks for the question, and thanks for having me here, Ed. Hi, Oli. Hi, Ali, and everybody in the panel and the audience. Interestingly, 5G is what, everybody is getting excited with 5G is because after a long time, operators or CSPs believe that they have a technology or a capability available with them where they can, plow back some of the mind share which they've lost to, the consumer-driven services. So traditional connectivity has lost out to, say, WhatsApp or, OTT services have taken over mind share of consumers. 5G, with the kind of, connectivity speeds, low latency, provides them a capability to be relevant in the changing landscape. Interestingly, it's one of your own surveys which you have done with your CSP partners, and almost 50% of CSPs polled believe that B2B is going to be key for in their next few years of revenue, and 5G is going to be the key driver for that. Think about the fast speeds and massive machine type communication, which is going to be used, and operators are going to leverage new and interesting use cases to be able to provide a slice of the network, a tailor-made for an enterprise, which requires a significant amount of change in the BSS, right? The number of devices to be supported, number of SIMs to be provisioned, the channels which need to be, taken care of, self-care facilities to be provided. All of this requires a significant amount of change in the BSS. Almost, all the CSPs we are working with are looking at this solution. Interestingly, it also will require a lot of close working with other industry verticals for which you will create use case based solutions. So yeah, we believe that 5G slicing is a huge opportunity. In fact, one of the network vendors has done their own independent studies. They are throwing up a number of around $200 billion by 2030 in terms of revenue potential from 5G slicing.
And what you're talking about, though, is making it a product that can be built and that has like many different types of chargeable elements to it potentially. right? Which I feel like is where it becomes a BSS thing, right? Because all of the like the delivery complexity of it, right? And we've had a lot of folks talk about, all kinds of, different approaches to virtualization and service chaining, and a lot of things that sort of come out of the traditional OSS side. But when we come over to the BSS side, I think what I hear you saying is that as we've seen the sort of incremental development of this technology, right, it always sort of starts at a baseline set of capabilities that build in more automation, and eventually become a product that's executable effectively in real time and chargeable in lots of different ways. And I think that's what you're talking about, is bringing slicing to that next step, right, where it's just deliverable as a product. Yeah.
Core to that will be the flexibility and the scalability which the base software will have, because you really need to take care of a many scenarios, number of devices, and at huge scale. So yeah, you're right.
Excellent. So let's, if Vikram, why don't you stay on actually, and Uli, maybe you can jump on, and let's go to the next slide, Ali, because we're all going to chat a little bit about some of the things that we find on this slide. So again, talking about 5G changes, right? What we found, and this is what really struck me, it's just that a lot of technical challenges become more severe, and that because of the entrance of the forces of 5G and related things that we're talking about, and what I found interesting, so two things. One, obviously, not just the raw numbers we see here, where a majority of operators are talking about systems and process integration being severe challenge, legacy systems continuing to be a severe challenge, which I think is a big part of today's subject too, in terms of BSS, all these other things you can read for yourself, process and task automation. And when I actually looked into the likelihoods, right, you kind of crosshatch the data and you look at what are the probabilities that pop out. What we're finding is that when you have folks saying, yes, we're expanding our ecosystem to do more in B2B verticals and add more services, and we actually may be even more engaged with our resellers and distributors and other partners as a result, they're the ones that are most often saying things like systems and process integration are more severe. So you see an exacerbation of these classic problems because of trying to do new things in different ways, like build out perhaps a more visible and real-time ecosystem in the B2B market. So I'm curious, let me be quiet here. Uli, maybe you can start and just talk about, maybe some of the top 3 or top 4 here, and how they maybe impact you, or what your thoughts are about them.
Yeah, absolutely. We built up our, let's say, business over the last 25 years, right? And the modern things are getting into legacy, right? And we're building a lot of things into that and functions which had a good reason in the past, but are useless now in the future, right? And therefore, building up new capabilities is so essential, because in our time, speed matters. And especially if I look to the first 3 things, real-time network and service customer visibility, because that's at the end of the day, the differentiation. The customer expect real-time, right? They don't wait for a letter or wait for someone response 2 days later. They want to have it real-time. And that's also, if you look to the new technologies which are coming, people in the entertainment, or if you're talking about augmented reality or slicing, you want to have it real time, and you want to monetize it real time. They don't
you
wait.
Get spoiled
right?
fast. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Your football game, if you want to book it now, you don't wait half an hour, because then already most of the time is over, right? So you have to have that now. So that's I think, from a business perspective, most challenging. If you look to really to the BSS and to the IT side, the systems and let's say the standardization of integration is key to that, right? So especially if we talk about open digital architecture, the standardization on, let's say, TMF forum APIs and also the data models is essential. And we still have a lot of old glitches, right? We need to cut off over time, but that's essential. So therefore, system and process integration and having this kind of practice and this kind of standardization is key. The other thing is, you have to make your bets on the let's say, legacy limited and capability limitations, because I think that the time is over where you rebuild your ship always new, right? You have to build modules which you can attack this kind of challenge, and you have to be very sure what are your priorities, right? And sometimes it looks very clear, but at the end of the day, to serve real-time network and customer visibility, if this is the key driver and the, let's say, unique selling proposition, you have to make these first two topics right. Otherwise, it will not work.
I feel like I've heard, Bikram, I'm sorry, do you have a comment you want to add to that? And then look like you're ready to speak.
No. I agree with what Uli is saying, and couple of things which I would like to add in terms of, say, legacy BSS and the challenges. Couple of things is, and it somehow links with the cloud question also, because there is a lot of focus on looking at cloud strategy for BSS, because that gives a little bit of flexibility and ease to try out new things, is data security and scalability, right?
Yeah.
And that's core to any kind of a strategy which needs to be followed in any legacy. And just one last point where I've noticed in the last 2 years, CSPs have become aware of the fact that a dramatic rip and replace won't work in a legacy system. They still
my
are,
next question.
systems are still powering a lot of revenue. You really need to have a very a different approach where you do step-by-step migrations. You look at small little pieces where you can create quick impact 2 to 3 to 4 quarters, and then have that project as self-funding itself over a large transformation. Yeah.
And I feel like, and this is a question really for both of you. I feel like in the last, let's say, year or two, so we had a lot of years of just pounding on digital transformation as the key buzzword in the industry again and again. And then as you drill down into BSS, there was kind of a drumbeat saying like, this is too expensive. We're finally gonna have to bite the bullet and make the big replacement. But pretty quickly after that, the commentary kind of backed off and said, well, we got to do stepwise, right? We can't do the big bang. We can't rip and replace all this stuff. And for all the obvious reasons you're talking about, I don't think the rip and replace argument was probably realistic in the first place. And I thought of it this way: if you sat in a room with a technologist that was really excited about, changing out billing and doing something new, yeah, that person might, in a vacuum, be really excited about that. But when you sit down with the finance guys and the legal guys and the regulatory people and the people who are in charge of, customer satisfaction and all that, they're going to look at you like you're crazy. So, and I obviously, I think a lot of us have been in those meetings. And so that's why I find this refreshing, to talk a little bit about how do we really deal with this issue. And just like you were saying, Uli, obviously the modular approach is, something that you're enthusiastic about. Ali, if you can jump to the next slide, I just want to kind of run through it. And then I want Uli really to get into talking about the 2025 vision for Vodafone, which is, I think, is why most people are here. So real quick, so in dealing with some of these legacy issues, not just legacy issues we're talking about, it's a combination of both. It's both not having that massive legacy disruption and being able to expand your capabilities to grow the business according to your plan and your strategy, right? So that's why, real quick here, it's, what are some of the things that the modular BSS needs to address? It's got to work with your cloud strategy. It's obviously got to work with your legacy base that you're not ripping out. It's got to deliver really robust and very modern functionality very quickly. It's got to adapt to continuous change, right? And we talked about that before, like Uli was saying, the 3 different platform models, right? All of this is a moving target. Again, supports any business model, same kind of angle. This was a big one to me. Maybe we can talk more about in a minute, but doesn't present the operator with unsustainable commercial terms. And that's not something that a lot of people tend to talk about in these kind of forums, obviously, in these kind of webinars, but I think it's an important part of the market that's changed. The way that these contracts are built, the way that you pay for things, what the cost recovery looks like, all of those kinds of things. And some of that's beyond my knowledge of finance, but I know that it plays a big role. And then obviously, just delivering rapid and incremental improvement, which I think is aligned with where the skill sets are going, right? Going more in an agile, DevOps, CI/CD direction. So that's sort of my conclusion on some of the things modular BSS needs to deliver. I think what we want to do here is hand off to Uli and tell us a little bit about, please, about the Vodafone 2025 vision. And then we're going to have Bikram come in and close this out.
Thank you very much, Ed. And it's a great discussion, and I like that format. I start my short update on our Tech 2025 vision with the ship of Theseus. Maybe you know him, right? Because he was a former, let's say, king in Greek and also a big hero. And he got let's say, a present from the Greeks, a new ship. And over time, he explained, hey, he exchanged one wooden plank by the other because, you know, erosion happened and all kind of things. And if he changed the first planks, he asked himself, is this now a new ship or is that still the same ship with new planks? I think in the first answer, with the first two planks, the answer is easy and obvious. But over time, he exchanged everything of that. And I choose that picture because that's essential, right? Just changing all planks in the ship, and it looks like a new ship. Is it a new ship, or is it still the same ship with new planks? And you obviously know the answer, right? It feels like a new ship, but if he transforms something, it's still the same ship. But looking at the CIO perspective and all the challenges which are happening, right? You will remember that you need this kind of modular approach and need with this kind of modular approach transform the business. And this is stepwise. And we started our journey, especially with that, to say, let's look at the most important things we want to change and start with them and giving user new experience and also our customer new experience with that kind of digital capabilities we have. Going to the next slide, Ali, please. And Ed covered most of them already, right? 5G is coming that injects really new possibilities, right? Really new possibilities. And, you know, we talked already a lot about slicing. We talk about edge computing, which you see also on that slide. We talk about automation. And let's say, especially if you look to the industry, that's their biggest bets, right? Because especially with 5G standalone, you have low latency, and that's the right thing for robotics, and injected new things. And you must remember that with these new things, the number of transactions will increase exponentially, right? And that means also for your BSS structure, they need to be capable to do that. IoT is one of the things which are really getting up now. And I think, especially if we look to microservices, is the question from the BSS and the capabilities we have there. And we are already used to real-time billing, massive billing stuff, and how we can use that capability also in other technologies. So there is in the BSS good stuff we can use, but, and that's what we saw before, we need to have this kind of platforms and integration layers which make that happen, to have this kind of open digital architecture. Can we go to the next slide, please? Because now I want to talk about our, let's say, Vodafone Tech 2025 vision. We as Vodafone Connect for the Future, we are looking for three main things we want to inject and we are building, right? The first thing is everything about culture. And you know, Peter Drucker's statement, culture is strategy for breakfast. And that's exactly what that means, right? What kind of tech culture we need to bring up, let's say, this kind of software engineering skill and also software development skills, because what we are seeing in the market is that you see also on the network side, on the 5G, a lot of stuff happening in the data center, right? So a lot of stuff will happening in there is still a physical network, no doubt, but a lot of stuff and differentiation will happen on the software. And we need to make that step and also that kind of convenience for our customer. The other thing I will talk a bit more in detail about platforms. And we are, you might have read that already. We published that we are now have already published that we in-source, or we are looking for 7,000 new software engineers to build up this kind of own software development inside of Vodafone, to make this kind of the three topics you saw, connectivity, end-to-end services, and platform business happening. And to having said that, that's easy, because it's easy for a software company to start as a software company. We are coming from a connectivity business, and we develop our connectivity, enhance that with especially this kind of things. Now let's look at platforms, because that's something which is really one of our revenue drivers. Ali, if we go to the next slide, please. scale platform is for us an essential part. And we started with IoT when we started also a couple of years ago with M-Pesa, especially in the African area, where we, let's say, scale our payment services and loan services in Africa, which is very, very successful. We haven't brought that so far to Europe or to Asia, but in Africa, it's very successful. And it's scaled, right? On the TV side, we have a huge platform already, right? On linear and also on digital TV content. So that's really scaling. The other platforms is analytics. As you see also in your request, what's the most important thing also in that kind of transformation? That's analytics, and how we use this kind of analytics, not just for, let's say, reporting, also for predicting, and also for service and maintenance, and also for customer service, which is very important. And the next gen comms is for us, how do we combine our heritage coming from a telco provider connectivity business, enhancing that with platform business, and enhancing that with digital services. So that means how we bring also innovation with our digital open architecture into our network and let them use that. We are using, for example, edge computing on that, mobile private networks, which is an important thing, especially for the industry, building up 5G standalone services for big operators. We started this just in the beginning of the year for BSS, which is one of the big chemical giants in Germany, where they have on their side our mobile private network, and they can use it, for example, to automate their production layers. And for us, and that's so important, because we believe, and that's our strong core belief, that the differentiation going forward is the software and the interaction, how we do with the customer. And that means for the BSS side, it needs a lot of capabilities to serve the demands of our customer. And we are not shaping that demand so far, right? The demand is shaped by the digital dragons and digital giants around us. And customer, they want to experience like that. And as I said, new technology is coming, like 5G. That means also from a TV and entertainment perspective, new possibilities, how you embrace, for example, entertainment today and tomorrow, right? And this kind of platforms has all something in common, right? They need to be scalable, they need to be easy to access, and they have standardization, right? Because that's the essential thing for platforms. And, especially this kind of multiple cloud, let's say, strategy is necessary to have that scalability, because, especially in TV or streaming environment, you cannot have an outage, or you cannot have a delay or a latency or something like that. Customer will directly reflect to that and say, this is a poor service. And therefore, this kind of capabilities around the BSS will increasing. And having said that, and on the modular part, right, we build, taking the ship again into the content, we build, for example, our omni-channel capabilities, especially on that kind of thing, to say, well, let's start on customer service, to give them an omni-channel experience, enlarge it to the retail, enlarge it to the sales, enlarge it to all channels. So we have now one platform around which gives an omni-channel experience to all channels and to all our third-party providers. And that's what I meant with a step approach, right? Not just big bang step approach, taking your, let's say, embracing the, let's say, experience our customers and also our partners have, and make it happen and make it scalable. Now going to the next slide, because that's so exciting. And for us, and that's the strategy and the cornerstone, is telco as a service platform. So that means not just for our consumer and business customers and internal customers, also open this telco functionality for our third parties. So for new products and new channels, especially if we want to enrich our, let's say, capabilities around and services for our customers, to give them the best experience they have. You got over time, you got really used if you take your shoes as a customer, you have an Apple streaming, you have a Disney streaming, you have a Netflix streaming, you have whatever streaming, and you have your TV provider, you get useless on the multiple things. You want to have a multi-aggregator, and that's something we want to provide, right? So that means on the platform, we digitize the capabilities around IT as a platform. So all BSS applications and functionality and capabilities is available. Then the network as well, also for local tenancy. So you have local differences, that's for sure. We are not in that stage then that we have just one platform. We have local differences. Therefore, on the aggregation on the global side, we aggregated on the tenancy side, the national things. And then we have global platforms like IoT ones, which are not that regulated over, let's say, one region. We can play much, much, much higher. And then above, you find the API gateways, microservices, and data. And we have the developer portals and SDKs, where you can use, let's say, this kind of services also for the third party and integrate that. And for us, that's built on, let's say, cloud, right? Because if you want to scale and make sure that you can grow that, you can only do that on a cloud environment. And of course, you have to provide a lot of stuff, making that sure. And you see some internal stuff there. ABC product, A is more the local product, B is a hybrid product, and C is a global product, right? Which Vodafone customers can embrace everywhere. But you have also some differences in the local market. So therefore, you have this differentiation in the product side. But especially on that kind of platforms, we want to make that available for our customers and also for our innovators like third party to make sure that we inject innovation also to our network and that people can use that. That's our Tech 2025 and platform strategy. And we are so, I would say, you see, I'm passionate about that because that's really a move.
We have, I think we have time to take a couple of the questions from the Q&A and then have Bikram step in. Am I right? Yeah, we definitely have time to take a question or two. So let me jump over, Uli. Looking at the Q&A now from Kamal Nayak asking, I think you mentioned something about AR/VR services earlier, and Kamal is asking, how do we see difference in AR/VR services and traditional data services from a BSS point of view?
Well, if you look at that, and especially how this kind of platforms for AR and also VR versus the traditional things are working, consumers want to book it now. You want to have access, so provisioning should be very fast. That's number one. Number two is, especially if you look for augmented reality stuff, that open also new experience to customer to, let's say, test your product you want to sell differently than you had before. And if you have already used an Oculus Rift or something like that and see what kind of possibilities are now already there, and if you see where Apple and others are going with AR, there is just more to come. And this kind of high integration of this kind of services to make that available for our customers, I think that's the challenge and that's the big difference, right? It's not like, oh, it's something we develop. No, we don't develop. It's coming from the outside, but we have to provide it.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you think about like if you're a gamer at all and you think about like the purchasing flow within a game, right? Even like on a PlayStation deck or anything like that, the way that that's integrated, the way the experience works, I think that's to some degree what you're referring to here in terms of making it a natural part. It's not a post-paid, I get a bill later kind of thing. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah. So another quick question here. From Giuseppe DeSanto, who asks, you mentioned becoming a software development company, and he asked, does that mean more in-house solutions than COTS products? And what in your view, what is in your view actual sustainability of a heavy in-house approach in the BSS domain? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's multiple questions, but so let's start with the first one. I'm a truly believer that the differentiation will come over, let's say, software design and software experience you have in the interaction with the customer. And we should be the owner of that interaction. That's very essential. We don't want to be, let's say, the billing provider of the year, right? And to make this kind of modules ourselves, that's not the case. But especially the interaction with the customer, we want to own. And I'm you know, in a couple of years, there was a lot of demand of DevOps people, and people are doing coding. The design view will uptake as well, because besides the experience of the service you embrace also how this interaction flows and how the digital design, so the software design in your interaction works. So that will be, from my perspective, one of the key differentiator going forward. And we want to set this kind of interface.
Okay, I have one more I'm gonna ask. This one's from Natalia Kolosova, who asks, if current BSS platform is scaled up via moving to cloud, for example, do you see a need to ask for the same scaling on the partner side, for example, a TV provider? Yeah,
definitely. And you mean scaling to the cloud is not refactoring just for the cloud. It means, and that's very important. If we move to such kind of cloud native software, that means we are shifting from release cycles into Kubernetes containers and popping up features and releases daily 1,000 times and more, right? So that's really a difference. And you can move a software into the cloud, and then it's cloud, and then you can scale it, of course, but that doesn't change. And that's like, look at the chip, right? If you look at the chip, right, and you just change the plank, it's still it's the same chip in the cloud, right? Which gives you scalability, but it doesn't change how you provide services to your customer.
Right. It makes sense. I have one more question in the Q&A, and actually it goes right into what Bikram's going to address. So Bikram, hopefully you're ready to step in, and maybe let me throw this question out, and I think it should roll right into your slides. So Chris Silberberg is asking, how modular is modular? Are we talking a complete product suite, billing, charging, product catalog, etc., or a more granular level, like the charging function in 5G as part of a wider charging system? That's a little bit of a nitty-gritty question, but Bikram, maybe you can hit that and jump right into your presentation, which I think expands on that a bit.
Interesting question, and thank you, Ed. And
sorry
nice
if I just threw you a curveball as well.
No, that's
on the spot.
No, that's fine. Yeah. And very interesting insights from Uli as well for us to all imbibe and learn. So modularity is core, right? If you see the ODA architecture, that's the basic essence of what modularity is and how microservices are getting defined and built. Is core to any BSS, and you really need to look at how close you can be to the architecture. And we look at modernizing the BSS by introducing these digital experience layers, offering microservices, which helps all these CSPs in actually modernizing, looking at giving them the flexibility because of the modularity. So that they can actually do these step-by-step transformations. You don't need to really be a burden by investing a lot, and you really need to see. And one solution is one size does not fit all in this case. So the CSPs need to have the flexibility of choosing. So modularity is key there. And I'll touch upon this and some other points probably in the next couple of slides. If you can just Ali, go to the next slide. And what we're trying to do is, given our engagement with almost all the operators across all the continents, we've tried to summarize and get a view for all our audience here in terms of what we are seeing with regards to what the operators are talking to us and where is this BSS modernization headed towards, right? So we've touched upon, but I'll just quickly say that the core is shifting. The traditional business is important, but there's a report from McKinsey that 10 to 15% of revenue currently already is also coming out of non-core, right? So there is a significant amount of interest in becoming relevant again. The digital players have taken a lot of mind share from the consumers, and like Uli was also alluding to, right? They need to control the experience layer. They need to control the interaction which the consumer is having with the telco. So that's really, really important. That's where the core is shifting. I've given an OTT as an example. OTTs are already taking revenue market share away from messaging and fixed voice and mobile voice, right? And operators are also looking at partnering with OTTs to provide differentiated services. Some of them have even delved into creating their own content, though not successfully, right? There is an enhanced increase on focus on B2B. In fact, like I alluded to earlier as a part of this discussion, 50% of the CSPs polled by TM Forum in a survey said that B2B is going to be significant, up around 50% of the revenue in future. And given this kind of interest in B2B, and with new technologies like 5G coming in, BSS modernization is very, very crucial, right? And the whole ecosystem, the regulations, the policies, the market, the business environment, all of it is changing, and the whole ecosystem is evolving. So we really need to be on our toes to be relevant in this scheme of things. Ali, if you can click first. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just give you a couple of examples very quickly in terms of what is that we are seeing in terms of the kind of engagements we are having with our partners. We're seeing a lot of engagement around BSS where people are looking at consolidating. So if you can go to the first example, Ali, we work with a CSP in US, who went through a merger. They had 2 sets of entities and 2 sets of systems, which was increasing the operating cost by almost 1.5x, right? And there was a case where we started working with them, and we leveraged our product suite Blue Marble as an overlay solution on top of these 2 stacks. And we saw a 30% reduction in operating costs. So that was significant for us and significant for the operator, and they could see that, okay, this actually works. You can have an overlay, and you can actually do a ease and an easy migration. If you go to the next example, in terms of modernization, what we are seeing is we work with a partner in Europe, and the challenge there was that their sales process was inconsistent. The backend systems, being old, lacked the flexibility to, take care of current needs. For example, a new mobile proposition or a pack would take a day. So this does not work in the current scheme of things. So we worked with them, and we provided a solution. We modernized their key stack, and we reduced the average hold time by around 40%. We could do the integration and across the legacy stacks to modernize their architecture. Just go to the next point in terms of collaboration. What we're seeing is, in terms of retail, there's a case that legacy systems of an operator led to gaps in inventory, and the sales cycle and sales process and inventory were leading to dropouts. And we worked with the operator. We provided them a consistent flow where we could see a 70% improvement in inventory, and we could see this improvement in the first 6 months of deployment. And very recently, last bit, we've been working with CSPs, to co-create business models, like Uli was alluding to. And Ed also was talking about, how are the business models evolving? The operators have worked with partners and seen that you pay a huge amount of money and you see results later. We are very flexible, and we are seeing co-creation of business models where we work on a value-based system where operators work with us and say that, okay, you delivered value and then you make money. And that's something which we have done with a couple of our partners. And we are also looking at, monetizing the solutions which we are taking given our distribution and reach. Last slide, Ali. So I'll just summarize, while CSPs are looking forward to offer cutting edge propositions, and be it technology, product, apps, all of this eventually works with some legacy systems, right? And this is where we are working with CSPs to innovate on technology, innovate on how to streamline their business processes, innovate on business models where we can offer more to them without impacting their budgets, and innovate on GTM models whereby co-creating and building solutions to solve day-by-day problems. Yeah, Ed.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, Bikram. Yeah, so we have a little bit of time here for some Q&A. I do have a question that came up. I believe this question is for Uli, but anybody can take it. It comes from Jonathan Goldberg, and if it's the Jonathan Goldberg I'm thinking of, this is someone who's been a force in the TM4 Open API initiative. Question is, what reaction are we seeing from vendors regarding the requirements to become more modular? Resistance, acceptance, support, embracement? You know, so I don't want to speak for Bikram, who just spoke for himself, but that's one that's embracing modular. Uli, what do you think?
We see all patterns, to be very honest. But what helps is transparency. You know, partnership means also if you change strategy to be open and transparent, right? And after you realize this kind of shock that the existing model will not work anymore, you start creating new operations and new things. Like Vikram mentioned already, this kind of co-creation is a good model to embrace, right? But there are also other opportunities to grow, right? And starting with exploring what kind of things has changed, that's at first for some, of course, shocking, but over time it's getting really better. And you know, at the end of the day, it's like in a good partnership, we can only win together, right? If there are, let's say, resistance into that will not work on a long-term practice, right? If we are not successful as a, let's say, CSP, also our partners will not get new orders, right? So we have to find ways to be successful, and that means also that we need to change the chip, right? So if we cannot go ahead with that chip then.
I have a point here, Ed, exactly. So see, the thing is, the way I see this right now, we are at the cusp of, and let's not look at it from a BSS transformation point of view. Right now, what's happening with the way technology is moving. Think about this whole pandemic right now, how easily we were able to shift from working physically to working remotely is all because of the infrastructure and the investment which the telcos have done over the number of years, not been able to realize the returns in that true value. But the way it is with 5G and the new technologies coming in, BSS as a system is core to that innovation, right? And that and if operators and CSP partners of ours have to win in this battle, they really need innovative partners and models to support those. And we look at this as an opportunity. We really don't believe that the traditional models of engagement are going to work in the future.
That makes sense. And I given that everything's changing, right, that all changes together, right? And that's the ship of Theseus point. I mean, I think that's a really well stated. We don't have any further questions from the chat or the Q&A. We have about 2 minutes left. I don't know if anyone has a final statement. I will say thank you to everyone for joining. And Uli and Bikram, thank you so much for your time and your expertise today. It's just been tremendous. And I'll just ask everybody again, you know, remember, we're going to send out the slides. So everybody will get the slides. And also please go ahead and download the ebook, you know, that we collaborated with Comviva on, Tech Mahindra and Comviva Blue Marble BSS, our sponsor here. Thank you again so much for that. Bikram and Uli, any final words?
Thank you very much for hosting and inviting me. Very honored. And it was a good session. And thank you very much for all the good questions, right? Because, you know, we are all in that game, right? And the world is changing fast, right? And changing, let's say, learning experience during that course is always helpful. So thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been great being part of this discussion. Stay safe and stay healthy.
Indeed. Thanks so much, everybody. Take care.
Take care.